Chapter 14. Tucker slapped the alarm next to him to shut off the annoying beeping, but it didn't stop. His eyes snapped open and he realized it was not his alarm going off, but his phone. Darkness still lay on the other side of his windows. What time was it? Who would be calling him this early? He grabbed the phone and dread flooded him as he recognized the number. Why was his sister calling him? Was she in trouble again? When their mother had died, Whitley had rebelled, acted out, but he'd thought she had outgrown most of that behavior. Hey, Whitley, what's going on? Tucker, it's Dad. He had a heart attack. You need to come home. A thread of fear colored her voice. Tucker wasn't sure he had ever heard her scared, so he knew it must be serious. Is he in the hospital? He is. They aren't sure what they're going to do next. They have to run some tests, but they're discussing a quadruple bypass. A quadruple bypass? Tucker wasn't even sure what that all involved. How? He eats fairly healthy, doesn't he? They think the stress of work finally got to him. Please tell me you can come home. Tucker bit the corner of his lip. He was supposed to be at the center in an hour, and he had practice after that. Blaine had told him not to miss any days, but if his dad were really sick, that would be an okay reason to, right? But then he had another shift at the center after practice, and dinner with Shelby, which he didn't want to miss. I'll see what I can do, Whitley, but I've got practice and an obligation this evening. Anger flooded her voice. What could possibly be more important than seeing your father before he dies? Wait, Dad's dying? Even though he and his father hadn't always had the best relationship, Tucker knew that should his father die without Tucker getting to see him, that he would regret it for the rest of his life. Well, no, but what if he has to have the surgery and dies on the table? Whitney asked, adding a sniffle for good measure. You're being dramatic, Whitley, but I'll do my best. He would have to call Coach and clear it with him first. Then he'd have to get a hold of Shelby and make sure she would allow him to make up the work next week. He didn't think it would be an issue, but he had learned that assuming something wasn't the best option. He dialed Coach's number first. No doubt the man wouldn't be happy, but Tucker hoped he would grant the time off. What's up, Tucker? Hey, Coach, I just received a call from my sister. My dad had a heart attack, and she wants me to come home and see him in case... He couldn't bring himself to utter the words, for fear it would make them come true. I know it means I'll have to make up some time at the center next week, and it's terrible timing with practice, but is there any way I can take a few days? It's my dad. Silence echoed from the other end. Coach was probably debating if he were telling the truth or not. It is a bad time, but family is more important than any game. Go, and I'll tell the team what's happening. Do you think you'll be back for the game? The Christmas game was only 4 days away, but there was no way he was going to miss it. I'll come back for the game, Coach. I promise. All right, go be with your dad. I'll be praying for him. The words caught Tucker off guard. For a moment, Coach sounded like his old teammate, Emmett Brown, but Tucker hadn't known Coach was a believer as well. Again, Shelby's words paraded through his mind, reminding him about his own decision to give his anger to God, but he pushed them away for the moment. Thanks, I appreciate it. You're welcome. Don't forget to call the woman at the center. You don't want to just not show up for the community service. I will. Tucker ended the call and then pulled up a browser window. He didn't have Shelby's number, or even the number of the center. Probably he should have asked for it, but he hadn't thought he would actually have to call her. The center information appeared on his screen and he clicked on the link to dial the number. Shelby probably wouldn't be there yet, but hopefully they would have voicemail so he could leave a message. The phone rang 4 times in his ear. He was about to hang up and try again later when a click finally sounded in his ear. The recording was faint and not very clear, and he wondered if they were using an old answering machine instead of voicemail. He didn't think anyone used them anymore, but the center was so behind the times that it was possible they hadn't joined the rest of the world in that area either. When he finally heard the beep signaling the end of the announcement, he rambled off his message. Shelby, it's Tucker. My dad had a heart attack and I have to return home. I don't know how long I'll be there, but I'll try to be back as soon as I can. I'll make up whatever hours I miss next week, and we'll do dinner when I get back. Thanks. As Tucker hung up the phone, he hoped the message would get to her. She would no doubt be livid if it didn't, and she thought he was just ducking the responsibility or standing her up. He'd seen it on her face last night when he'd been late. But he'd done all he could, at least for now. Shelby glanced at her watch and decided she had time to check the news before heading into work. It wasn't a daily habit, but she did like to know what was going on in the community, in case the center needed to help out in any way. The Texas Tornadoes have issued a statement that Tucker Jackson will not play in Sunday's game. Shelby's fork clattered to her plate as her jaw dropped. Not play? Why? The decision comes amid charges that Jackson was involved in a bar brawl after the last game. He has been serving community service at the South Lake Community Center. But evidently that wasn't retribution enough for victim Jude Renfro, who came forward last night with the allegations. Jude Renfro? So was that why he had pulled his donation? Had Tucker known? She thought back to the day she'd spoken to Mr. Renfro. Yes, Tucker had been there, and she'd definitely mentioned Renfro's name. Yet Tucker had said nothing. Had he not known the name of the man he fought with? That seemed unlikely. Even if he hadn't known Renfro, his name would have appeared in the police report. Unless perhaps the police weren't called. Were police called to bar brawls? Shelby had no idea. She'd never witnessed a bar fight, and she didn't follow police activity on a regular basis. Then her mind flew to last night. Was that why Tucker had offered to fund the party? Because he knew he'd been the reason her donor pooled? Why wouldn't he just tell her that? Was he ashamed? Or was he playing her? Maybe the dinner invitation had been to butter her up as well. But that made no sense. He couldn't have known Mr. Renfro would come forward. Could he? Shelby flicked off the TV and grabbed her coat and purse. She had questions, and she wasn't going to let Tucker off easy. He'd mentioned he had anger issues, but he should have told her about the bar brawl, especially with the center's reputation at stake. The parking lot was empty when she arrived, but Tucker had said he'd be in at 8 to discuss the Christmas party. It was 10 till, giving her just enough time to open the center and rehearse what she was going to say to him. Whoa, that is a face that could kill, Kenzie said as she opened the front door. You better fix that before the kids start showing up, or you might scare them away. Shelby had been expecting Tucker, but he was late. Did you watch the news this morning? A look of incredulousness blanketed Kenzie's face. You're kidding, right? I never watch the news. It's too depressing. They never talk about the good things, only about all the awful stuff happening in the world. And I don't need to fill my head with that. Why? Turns out Tucker was serving community service for punching a guy in a bar, she said through clenched teeth. Kenzie's eyes widened to the size of quarters. What? That's bad, right? Yeah, that's bad. If the parents see this story, they might pull the kids. Even worse, the guy he fought with is Jude Renfro. Kenzie's face blanked, and Shelby knew she was trying to place the name. When her eyes widened, Shelby knew she had figured it out. Like our donor, Jude Renfro? Shelby crossed her arms and nodded. The very one. No wonder Tucker was willing to fund the party. He has to know he's the reason Mr. Renfro pulled his donation. Kenzie's brow furrowed. But Tucker is still funding it, right? I mean, the party is still going to happen? Shelby shook her head. Kenzie was missing the point. Well, he said he was going to fund it. But he's not here, and he was supposed to be here 10 minutes ago. What if he saw the news and decided he didn't need to fund it anymore since he can't play on Sunday? Wait, what? Kenzie asked. Shelby sighed in frustration, but as Kenzie hadn't seen the story, she explained the situation. The team suspended him for Sunday's game because of Mr. Renfro's allegation. What if they told him and he decided he didn't need to finish his service? What if he was playing us? Making us think he was having fun, but he was only here because of the requirement. The thought sobered her, mostly because she'd thought he'd been connecting with the kids and enjoying himself, but also because of his words last night. If he was pretending to enjoy volunteering, then perhaps he was only pretending to like her. But what could he possibly hope to get from that? Kenzie rolled her eyes. You're the sensible one, Shelby, but you're acting crazy right now. She was, and she knew she was. But what other explanation was there? He hadn't shown up, and he hadn't called. There's something else I haven't told you, Kenzie. Last night, he asked me to go to dinner with him tonight. But that's great! Why do you look like that's not great? Because he's not here. Shelby threw her hands up in frustration. What if he was playing me too? Kenzie crossed the room to Shelby and picked up her hand. I think you know that isn't true. Now, I don't know why Tucker hasn't called, but maybe he's stuck in traffic, or maybe he overslept. He was probably tired after last night. Have you tried calling him? Of course I tried calling him, but I just got his voicemail. Then you keep trying. I don't know what happened in the bar fight, but you should hear his side of the story before you jump to any conclusions. You owe him that much. Kenzie was right. Shelby knew that what was on TV was usually only half of the story, and Tucker hadn't given her a reason to doubt him, other than his not being here right now. The phone rang beside her and Shelby picked it up. South Lake Community Center, how can I help you? Is this Shelby Doll? Yes, may I ask who this is? This is Melissa Udding. I'm Colson's mother. Shelby's heart sank. Had Colson said something about Tucker's intervention last night? Yes, Mrs. Udding. How can I help you? I'm calling about the story I saw on the news this morning. Shelby forced herself to remain calm and collected, but this was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Why on earth do you have someone who is charged with assault working with the kids there? Assault? The story she had watched had said nothing about assault charges. Had there been something more, or had Melissa read more into the story than what was said? I understand your concern, Melissa. However, I am unaware of any assault charge. Melissa cut her off, and the anger in her voice could have started a fire. Did you watch the news this morning? I did. I saw that Tucker has been suspended due to allegations, but there was no mention of an assault charge. Besides, we are a center that allows people to serve community service here. I'm not sure of the circumstances behind the allegations, but I can tell you that Tucker has been great with the kids. Well, Colson will not be returning. Any center that would allow an athlete to work there who probably bought his way out of an assault charge is not someplace I want my son. Shelby was about to respond when the loud click, followed by the dial tone, told her that Melissa was no longer on the other end. While she didn't feel Melissa pulling Colson was that big of a loss, especially after the bullying incident, she feared that this phone call was going to be the first of many.